Greetings, friends. America's Freedom Foundation presents Dr. Edward P. Reddeck with the plain truth on the end times and coming apocalypse. This presentation is being provided to you courtesy of the Global Church of God. For more exciting information in plain English on biblically based subjects, see www.gcg1.org.
This is the Professional Singles Club of America, and we have a real treat for you tonight in store. We have some stimulating and scintillating conversation and a wonderful talk by Dr. Reddeck, who is a noted author, lecturer. He's an international entrepreneur. What else? Scholar, Bible scholar, and one of the foremost authorities on that particular subject. So he's going to speak with us this evening, and then we are going to open up the floor, and we're going to talk back, right? All right, Dr. Edward Reddeck, please.
At this club, we speak on various topics of interest. We speak on topics ranging from romance to relationships to politics to international relations, international affairs. It is designed to stimulate conversation, to stimulate thought, to give you something to talk about, to think about, and to, in some cases, worry about. So tonight, I'll be speaking to a subject that is of great concern to me. It has to do with things that are happening on the international scene. A move underway in this world to set the stage for a soon-coming global dictator. Now, many people have heard a lot about this subject. There's all sorts of stories being told. It's being made popular in movies. It is commonly referred to as 666, or the mark of the beast. This subject is not really a spiritual subject in the sense of ghosts and goblins and magic. It is a subject dealing with actual events that have transpired in the past, that have been transpiring throughout the history of mankind, and the stage is being set now to bring forth the final solution to this problem on a worldwide scale. I began to be interested in this subject many, many years ago. I was riding down the road when I was in the military, going from my home in Norfolk, Virginia to my base station in McGuire Force Base in New Jersey. And I was playing with the radio dials, listening to the music, and all of a sudden, on came this broadcast, which sounded like a news commentator, speaking to the fact that we were facing serious difficulties, telling about famine, disease epidemics, war. I said, hold it, this has got to go. I got ready to turn it off, and then he said, but your life is at stake. Now listen, I was not interested in religion whatsoever. As fate would have it, my father, when I was a very young boy, decided he wanted me to become an historian. So at age 6 years old, he bought me these voluminous books, correspondence courses on ancient history. Who was Plato, Aristotle, Nebuchadnezzar, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So I had a keen interest in history. So when this guy started talking about prophecy, which was prehistory, history that was going to happen in the future, I had a foundation upon from which to build. So because my life was at stake in this issue, I began to pay a little more attention to what was going on. So that launched me into a 25-year study of these world events. Until you know the players in the game, you cannot understand who is doing what. So what I'm going to do briefly tonight is take you back before Earth was ever created to a time when there was nothing of the physical universe here. At some point that we don't know, billions, trillions, eons ago, there was a being which we call God. At that point, this individual created a whole race of individuals a whole race which we call angels. These angels apparently were used to build our physical creation, because it says that all the angels sang for joy when the earth was founded, when the earth was built. So there's indications that they were here prior to the creation of the physical universe. But anyway, we know there are three big archangels, Lucifer, Gabriel, and Michael. These angels were the leaders and the heads of millions and millions and millions of angelic beings, spirit beings that have immortality, that are in another dimension, in another plane, and that are much more powerful than we are. Well, at some point in the history after these beings were created, Lucifer was assigned to the earth as his kingdom, his domain, his responsibility. He was the president in charge of the earth. He decided at some point that he was not happy being just in charge of the earth, so he got a third of the angels and they launched a coup d'etat against God's throne in heaven. So, of course, his attack failed. He was repulsed. He was thrown back down to the earth. And at that point, he became the adversary, and his name was changed to Satan, which means adversary. Now, along comes the beings that we call God, was said, let us create man in our image. So, at some point in history, he decided they were going to create mankind. They created man in two models. One model is the male and one is the female. And put him in the Garden of Eden. Satan came along and tricked them into being disobedient to what God had told them what to do. They got kicked out of their happy home right away, out in the street, We have history beginning to start itself. Now, God had a program in mind. He knew what he's doing. He's working out a plan below to develop beings that would not rebel against him as did Lucifer. As we come down through history, we see we had the flood where mankind had gotten so far aligned that they were destroyed, except for Noah's wife and their 3 children and their wives. Then we come to the more current point in history where you had a man named Abraham who proved to be faithful to God, and his sons, Isaac, Jacob, who became Israel. And this is where we begin to pick up the interesting story. Israel was 12 tribes, 13 counting Joseph, who had 2 sons, each from Manasseh. So Nebuchadnezzar had this frightening dream. He saw this huge monster with a head of gold, and it was just frightening. And he didn't know what it was. Now Nebuchadnezzar was the head of the most powerful nation on earth at that time. And so he had this frightening dream, so he knew Daniel was able to interpret dreams, so he called in Daniel. And Daniel began to explain, says, Nebuchadnezzar, you are that head of gold. And then he began to explain that what we have is, this prophecy refers to a series of nations, kingdoms, Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Greek Empire, and then the Roman Empire, as pictured in this great statue. Now we fast forward to the book of Revelations. Now most scholars feel that these 10 nations will be in Europe, that the common market that we see now is just the forerunner of these 10 nations. Now, there is a lot of various different books available on this particular subject, and I'm not, only one speaking to this issue. You have a book here called The Mark of the Beast by an organization that goes into some detail with all the various scriptures and, what have you. Then you have this other book, Globalism, America's Demise. It's another book that's available, and it speaks to the stage being set, the circumstances being set on a global basis to bring about this beast that we have, this Frankenstein monster that's about ready to appear on the scene. Now, the most prevalent book where this came from is, of course, the Bible. In the book of Daniel, which is in the Old Testament, and the book of Revelations, which is in the end of the New Testament, and other passages throughout these books refer to these things that are coming about. They are, these are the facts that bring us to our current position now. Now, what most people who look at Bible prophecy and look at these predictions, and there are a lot of people that come up with things really off the wall, they feel that these things are either not true, the figment of somebody's imagination, or there's some spiritual context. You think of a ghost or some factor that is not actual factual. Now, one of the major proofs of the authenticity of the Bible is the fulfillment of prophecy from time immemorial to this very day. So when you see these things beginning to come about, you have to take caution and note what is happening. Now, when the Roman general Titus came down to lay siege to Jerusalem, this was a fulfillment of prophecy. Now, when those armies appeared at the gates, they had swords and they had shields and they were ready to do battle. Now, fortunately for many of the inhabitants in the city, Titus was called away due to a resurrection in another part of the Roman Empire, so he had to leave this little city alone and go and take care of this more serious insurrection that was taking place in another part of the Roman Empire. When he came back, those who saw these things happening, those who were aware of what was going on, they fled the city of Jerusalem and went to a place which was called Petra. Now, just as soon as Titus finished taking care and suppressing that other revolution, he came back to Jerusalem. And history shows that the Jews at that point were captured, taken into captivity, and dispersed all over the entire world. That was a prediction, a biblical prediction. Now we have seen in our lifetime that the Jews have been returned to their homeland. It is a miracle. Nothing short of a miracle. They were returned to the land that they were in, the land that they were brought up in, that was given to them by God through the promise of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, but now we see other frightening things occurring on the world scene. We see the treaties that we are dealing with Russia. Our whole focus in this country has been on Russia. Russia. Yes, Russia is bad. Russia is a threat. But while all this is going on, while we are being disarmed, unbeknownst to the average person, Europe is increasing in strength. Now, our founding fathers of this nation warned us about the Europeans. They warned us about the treachery that they get involved in over there, and told us to leave them alone. Well, we didn't pay attention to what the founding fathers said, and we've been involved with them, and we've had 2 major world wars as a result of it, and we are now on the threshold of a very serious possibility of World War III. The coming beast, the mark of the beast, which it says that nobody will be able to buy nor sell anything unless you have this mark of the beast, this identifying symbol, this mark that will be somehow imposed upon you that will cause you to not be able to do any kind of business whatsoever. But what you have is an economic order. You have a political, an economic, and a religious system that seizes control of the whole world. Now, these people do not care. The mindset of these people who run these various types of government programs, we've seen the communists. In China, they've killed about 100 million of their own people, just in cold blood, not because they were religious, but just because they didn't like what they looked like, or what they said, or if they protested against the government. Russia, I believe, has killed about 50 million since they've been in power, and they didn't do it necessarily for religious reasons. They do persecute religious groups, but they're not particular. Anybody who disagrees with them, you can be the biggest atheist in the whole entire world. But if you disagree with what they have to say, they will kill you. So this combine is coming on the world scene, this incredible beast power, is a combination of a Nazi communist type, civil type government and a great religious world-ruling, globe-girdling religious power. A country who controlled most of the sea gates in the world, the Straits of Malacca, the Panama Canal, other military choke points that are prime places to protect ourselves from an attack from Russia, anyone else in the world. We're now in danger of losing the Philippines. All across the world, we see our power being diminished. Well, as our power is being diminished, of course, Russia has been increasing their power. But the problem with the communist power is that they are to a great deal dependent upon technology from the West to support their aims and their goals. We've been allies with Russia during 2 wars. So we are not that much at odds with Russia as everybody would like to have us feel. Yes, we have competing systems, we have different ideologies. They're a totally atheistic country and we're not. But nonetheless, the hostility is not nearly as great with Russia as it is with certain other countries. Now, the hostility we've had has been in the heart of Europe, with primarily Germany. There have been books written over the years called Watchers on the Rhine, The Nazis Go Underground, stating that they will come back again. They will plan their new Reich based upon learning the mistakes from the past and from uniting Europe, so they don't have to fight all of Europe as they had in the past. Now, right now, Germany is divided. But we saw just a few months ago the Chancellor from East Germany come over to West Germany and have their first talks since the severing of those powers. So what we hear is even the Pope is talking about a United States of Europe from the Atlantic to the Urals. So we are seeing now the stage is being set on the world scene to bring forth another world power. And this world power will be stronger than either the United States or Russia. And this power will be a United States of Europe. Now, what I want you to do is just think about this and just watch. And as you see these things begin to come, then you know that I had some inside information from someplace, and you can take heart and know that you better begin to take whatever necessary actions to protect yourself. Now, the prophecy also indicates certain other things to be transpiring in the world scene as well. The whole focus of the Bible and the whole focus of Bible prophecy and the whole focus of the end time prophecy and the whole focus of the beast and the whole focus of the world today is on what nation? The nation of Israel. The Bible was written from a point of view of a perspective from Jerusalem and from Israel. Everything else looks outward from that direction. That's where the people wrote from, that's where their hearts were, that's where they were in many cases. So a few weeks ago, I saw of a pending lecture from one of the very prominent members of the Israeli Knesset, which is their parliament. So with a friend of mine, I went to hear what he had to say, because he said that he had solutions regarding the many problems that Israel was facing. So knowing certain predictions are going to happen in the nation of Israel, I went to hear what he had to say and to ask him some personal questions regarding events that I knew were planning on transpiring. So during his presentation, I had a lady friend of mine who I took with me, who had been suffering through many of my minute lectures on this subject matter regarding these events that are going to transpire in the end times. And so she is not religious. She is not concerned about these particular biblical issues. She is extremely well concerned about what's going on in Israel, about the state of Israel, as she should be. So anyway, I had previously over the months explained to her certain things that would be transpiring in the future. So as we were sitting there in the lecture and the minister from the Israeli government was speaking on various subjects, he mentioned an issue that I told her that had to come about, and she almost fell out of her chair. I mean, at that point, I had been elevated from just an average person speaking a lot of things about possible events to the office of a prophet. Because now, I had no way of knowing these things. I did not know this person personally. I never met him before. I never knew anything about it. So after the meeting, I went up and asked him. I said, Rabbi, I would like to know a couple things. I said, in your presentation, you mentioned that Israel is, for the most part, a secular nation. In many cases, like the United States of America, their heritage, they cling to their heritage, but when it comes to Sabbath, they're not down to synagogues, they're out on the beach. So he was saying that a lot of people are saying, well, why don't we just have a pluralistic society? Just have a mix of all religions and everything else in this nation. Well, he brought up the point. He said, to preserve the identity of the Jewish people, we have to become more Jewish, more traditional Jewish. In other words, we have to start taking our heritage and our religion seriously. So he said that to preserve the state, we're going to have to get a little more serious about the faith once delivered. So in the process, he said that there is a move underway in the nation of Israel to restore traditional values and to establish an old Mosaic type of attitude. Now this has to be because in the Old Testament, New Testament, we speak of the rebuilding of Solomon's temple, or David's temple in Jerusalem. Now, there are several problems. One of the problems is that right on top of where the Holy of Holies is, where the temple was, you have one of the Muslim mosques. And so that poses a dilemma. The second thing is that when you rebuild the temple, they'll have to go back into human sacrifices. Not human sacrifices, animal sacrifices. Well, but anyway, which they had in the Old Testament. So the predictions are that this great false prophet and this great beast power will come down into Jerusalem, into Israel, under the pretext of establishing a protecting for the nation of Israel. And then will betray Israel, and this great false prophet will set himself up in the temple, who will cut off the sacrifices that the Israeli people have started in acknowledgement of their religious heritage, and will set himself up in the temple as God himself, not as a prototype, but actually God. So one of the major fulfillment of this prophecy is the rebuilding of the temple. So when you see the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, or if you see something happen in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, whereby one of those mosques is no longer there, for whatever reason, then you know the stage is being set for the rebuilding of the temple, and the rebuilding of the temple heralds the coming of the end of our age. Now the good news is that we are going to survive in the end. Humanity will not be totally destroyed. We will survive. There is a way of escape. There's a way to protect ourselves. Like I just finished saying, the Jews in the nation of Israel, in Judea, in Jerusalem, when Titus came and withdrew, they got out, because they knew what was happening. If the Jews in Germany had have known what Hitler was all about, they would have got out and been spared. Now we got several choices. ladies and gentlemen, we can be aware of what's going on in this world. We can be attuned to what is happening in this world. We can do everything we possibly can to protect our national freedom and our national sovereignty in this nation, so that we have the right to be Christian, Jews, Muslims, atheists, or whatever, or agnostics, or whatever we want to be. So we have that right, or we can not pay attention and not stand up for our liberty and our freedom, and end up absolutely, totally under the sway of this monstrous beast, who will tell us what church to go to, and to what religion we ought to adhere to, and probably tell us who we're supposed to marry, who we're not supposed to marry, and where we can live at. And anybody who is intelligent, the intelligentsia, such as what we have here tonight, will be right at the top of the list of those to be eliminated. Not because you've done anything wrong, because you know too much. Now, the problem we have with Americans is that we have a tendency to be very independent. We do not like anyone telling us what to do. It is extremely difficult for us to be submissive to anything, to anybody, anytime. So when we have a dictator imposed upon us by force, there's going to be problems, and they will have to resort to ultimate force to put it down. So we have two options. The first option is to do everything we possibly can to protect the freedom in our nation, to stay alert, to support those who are supporting our freedom. The second thing to do is to stay attuned and look and watch, so that if things get bad, we can escape ourselves to some place where we can have a place of safety. Now, where that is, I do not know. There is a promise in the Bible for those who are loyal to God, that they will be taken to a place of safety for 3.5 years during the height of the tribulation. So there is that hope and that possibility. Now, I don't want to frighten everybody, nor to make everybody think that God is a boogeyman, nor a monster, nor a hanging judge, nor any of the rest of these things that so often are, labels that are given to him. There's nothing that's going on that he doesn't know about. There's nothing that you do that he does not know about. There's nothing that has gone on from the history of the world that he doesn't know about. So he is not shocked by what's going on, and he's not, the recent affairs that are going on. It's not shocking him. He knows it's nothing there's nothing new under the sun. History continues to repeat itself. But we do have an obligation to make any type of arrangements that we have with him. And the relationship with him is one-on-one, and not with me, nor any minister, nor anybody else, because he is the one who has the final authority to grant you eternal life or to take your current life. So, in the meantime, we have a job to do. We have to stay alert, to pay attention to what's going on, to continue to improve ourselves, to work to better our lives as much as possible, and those loved ones we have, and to tell our friends and warn our friends about this coming monstrous beast power. Because it would not be very fair, now that you've been told and you've been warned. You can see the scenes coming on the world. We're talking about trade wars. When I first started studying this 25 years ago, they was talking about America being subject to trade wars. Are you kidding? Trade wars? Nobody's going to engage in a trade war with us. We destroy it. And now, for the last 5 years, you hear on a continual daily basis, trade war, trade war, trade war with Japan, trade war with Europe. So as you see these things come about, we're a lot closer to the time when this monstrous beast will come on the scene. Also, we hear signs of massive disease epidemics. Now we're faced with the monstrous, horrible AIDS epidemic that is reaching pandemic proportions in some parts of the world. That's another sign of the times. We also are facing something that to me is very frightening. Death, they can only kill you one time. Even though I don't relish the thought of anybody killing me, and they're going to have to get up early in the morning to do so.
Sponsored by America's Freedom Foundation, that is dedicated to protecting the freedom of our entire nation and restoring justice for all in America. That will also provide you with the information on how to protect yourself and loved ones from the super predators in places of power and influence. See www.aff1.org and erfreedomblog.aff1.org.
The financial collapse of the entire world is something that is very frightening to me. My father was brought up in the Depression, so he instilled into me, through his example, the anxiety of what this depression was all about. How that, there were bread lines and that people were starving and all these things. Now, the Bible talks about economic collapse. It talks about famine. And it speaks about it's going to happen in our day and our time. Now, all this you can gainsay and not believe, but in our papers every day, we just had Wall Street had the biggest crash since the Great Depression. And they're telling us everything is okay. We had more banks go under last year than even the Great Depression. But our economy is still okay. They've been exporting our jobs to foreign countries all around the whole world, so that while we are increasing, our jobs are increasing, they're all in the service industry. McDonald's hamburgers and Wendy's and, taxi drivers and that sort of thing. So our heavy industry, the heart of our nation, the Rust Belt as it's called, is a Rust Belt. Of course, we've lost the industry, and we have exported it across the pond over there, across the ocean, to the Japanese, not to the Japanese, to the Koreans and various third world countries that are working for 10 cents an hour to our $10 an hour. So these things are undermining the whole economy. And the only thing that saved us in World War II was the fact that we had a tremendous industrial base that we could quit making cars and start making tanks. Now, what are we going to do in our country when all of a sudden Germany is our enemy, and maybe Japan, that is a world power right now, economic powerhouse, decides that they do not want to send us, that we need to send an order to Toyota to make some tanks for us. So what are we going to do? So our whole country is in a precarious position at this point, and it all sets the stage for the weakening of our nation so that the beast power can come on the scenes. Now, what I want everybody to do is to pay attention to what's going on in world affairs. Tell your friends. There's literature available. Watch the news. Watch these things are happening. Because if you knew that, if you overheard a conversation that a burglar was going to come by a friend of yours' house, and they were going to beat your friend, and they were going to loot your house and your property, if you didn't tell them, you would not be a friend. So, in other words, you have an obligation to tell people, as I've told you tonight, informed you, and once you tell them, if they don't do anything, it's their responsibility. So responsibility to this knowledge that I gave you is yours now, and you can do as you will with it. I do hope that you're heeded. I do hope you'll pay attention. Get your financial house in order. Get married. The two together is a lot better than one, and we need all the help we can get in this, with these things. Two heads are better than one. But anyway, and I'll conclude that presentation tonight. Any questions anyone has, I'll turn it over to Carla here, and you can ask questions from people.
And that was, and Doctor, you'll probably have to help me with this, because I can't take it perfectly. It's Revelations 13, I believe it is, when it says man, even the poem that they go through, and man will be, I can't even start out, and I'm cutting through too, I'm paraphrasing. Man will create armies against one another and they'll be fighting against one another. What is it? Can you recount it for me?
Yeah, but what they're referring to, I'm sure, is the Battle of Armageddon, or what's in the Bible is referred to as Gog and Magog. These terminologies are codes naming of the founding fathers of certain nations. You know, the Russian and the Chinese people are descended from a personage. A personage is named Gog and Magog. And Magog is a derivative where you get Moscow. So you have at this point in the history, when the armies come down to Jerusalem, you have two opposing world forces. You have the communist hordes of an army of 200 million strong marching on Jerusalem down through Persia, through Iran. On the other side, you have the blitzkrieg beast power coming up through Europe to Jerusalem from the other direction. And they're to meet in a battle, what's called the Battle of Armageddon right outside of Jerusalem for the final climactic end-time battle. So that's what you're referring to in the armies against armies.
No, I'm not. I've got a whole nother theory after going through it last night.
Oh.
You're going to die. Do you have your Bible? Can you read that poem specifically? And I got my own little variation on a theme here, but it doesn't perfectly correspond. I'm not going to sit here for years and figure it out, but I would like you to read that, because then I want each and every one of you, just abstract, like Beckett, come up with your response to that.
Revelation, what was that again?
Wait, we have a gentleman. Yes.
Hi, my name is Dennis.
Hi.
Oftentimes there's a way of looking at things from an entirely different viewpoint and realizing that maybe they aren't what we thought they were, even though they're in fact the same item. Much the same as like looking at my hand. From this viewpoint you see one thing, and people behind me see something entirely different, yet it's the same hand. Somebody put forward a very interesting theory about the beast of the 666. The carbon molecule has 6 atoms, has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. And that's the organic belief in the body. And since we're spirit, we're not bodies. We just live in our bodies. That the identity with our body is at war with ourselves. That's the Battle of Armageddon. That's the war that we fight with ourselves continuously. We really have never left the spirit world. We just identify with the physical world. So we're really unaware of the world that we really live in. I mean, we're really all connected as spirits, because there's really only one of us in this room. We're just different cells of the same body. And it's the identification with the body that separates us from ourselves.
I love that. Wait a minute. What was the carbon?
Carbon molecule.
The carbon
The
molecule?
carbon molecule has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. And that's what all physical matter is made of. All living matter, all organic matter.
He just solved the only linking thing that put my whole theory. Now, I'm sure Einstein sat for years and sweated these things out like buckets. What did I do? I read it and I came up with it. Would you read that for just a second, and then I will give you my version.
What verse is that? Revelation?
Revelations 13, I believe.
It had 7 heads and 10 horns, and 10 crowns upon each of his horns. And was written on each head were blasphemous names, each one defying and insulting God. These creatures looked like a leopard, but had bear's feet, a lion's mouth, and the dragon, which is always referred to as Satan, gave him his own power and throne and great authority. And this whole thing is in code. It's later on in other passages it says the dragon was Satan, the beast was this. And Bible theologians and world scholars understand that these things refer to successive kingdoms. So what we are dealing with is actual physical things that are going to transpire. That when Hitler launched his blitzkrieg warfare against France, those were tanks, my friends. They were shooting live bullets, and a lot of people died. Now, you can call that, you cannot spiritualize that away. When we dropped a bomb on Japan, atomic bomb on the Japanese, that was not spiritual, that was physical. And those people were no longer in the land of the living. Okay, now, at the Battle of Armageddon, you're going to have at least 200 million soldiers coming from the communist Russian and their allies. And on the other hand, you probably have to have close to that from the allies of the beast power, that they will have a falling out and go to war, and the blood will flow up to the horses' brows in the Valley of Armageddon for 100 miles. That's just at the point where Christ returns to establish his government on earth. And for those who are Jewish, it is the Messiahs were coming to establish Israel as the prime nation on earth. And they're both one and the same from the point of view of biblical theology. Go ahead.
Well, all right, but then what is, using this specific word that's been used throughout, did you finish the poem, by the way?
I can read it from now on.
Well, no, just the one that says, and man will create armies and war with one another and will not exist.
It says there'll be wars and rumors. I'm sure that was paraphrased. That was creative journalism.
Well, see, my mother and I go head to head on theology because it's just like a circle. This is, I have a great faith, but when someone sits in a circle when we were little kids, we played those games, and it was, the secret would start out with one person and it would go around the circle, and by the time it got back, it was a total distortion of what had happened. It had a grain of truth. So that was it. That's where I come from in that specific thing. I'm throwing all kinds of problems into this.
Okay. Now, like I was saying, I told this friend of mine that things were going to transpire in the nation of Israel. Okay? I have no inside knowledge of what's going on in the nation of Israel other than what I read in the paper. Okay? I was not privy to this inside information. Only knowledge I had was out of this book that said certain things were going to have to happen. Now, so I'm sitting there, and the member of the Israeli Knesset tells things to the audience that I told her that he was going to do that blew her mind. Okay, these were physical things. So this book told 2,000-3,000 years ago that these things were going to happen, and they happened. So that is, you can talk about, well, there's a grain of truth here and a grain of truth there, but when you see these major things happening, we're not discussing, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, or stupid theological arguments that have been going on from time immemorial. We're discussing actual events that are going to happen. And when they happen, it is no gainsaying. When they build a temple in Jerusalem, how do I know they're going to build a temple in Jerusalem? I mean, how do I know they were planning on it? They're planning it. How do I know? Only because of this. So when it happens, then somebody had to know something way back for it to come out.
Wait a minute, I thought I was going to hit another thing there. Now, I'm a very strong believer, but mine doesn't come from a book. Mine comes from what I know from wherever, and I don't even question it. But that always bothered me, and I think that maybe we do try to fulfill prophecies, or we are guided, just as you tell your friend, oh, you look tired today, and maybe she was just feeling peaked for a second, and then all of a sudden she's very tired. It's colors that we throw. I'm just giving you food for thought. Okay. Because I want to raise some questions here. The other thing being is the Antichrist. I came up with my very own, because that word frightens me like I can't tell you, and I don't know why. It just does, and I'm human. But I came up with my own version of it. I was reading through, and I thought, I'm not pure by any shape of the imagination, so, let the first stones be thrown. Drugs. I know that sounds very simplistic, but I thought it is absolutely tearing our society about. I was coming back from Europe, and on Pan Am I was reading on all of the U.S. Newsweek and whatnot, the changing face of organized crime. It's frightening. It's frightening. It's very, very frightening.
What do you do? What do
I'm
you
a
do?
writer.
You're a writer? In what field?
I'm a playwright. I write musical comedies.
Oh, really? Good. What?
Bottom line physics.
Everything that exists.
And what you were saying provoked another thought. Doctor, jump in at any moment, please.
Yes, well, see, all these things, a lot of things we can argue about, from now on to Judgment Day, And I love to discuss philosophy and theory and all sorts of exciting, mental stimulating gymnastics. But my concern is, what do we do when these armies appear on the world scene and they say, we want you, surrender or die? Then what do we do?
What army?
Any armies, the armies of the beast power.
What armies compared to anybody that's here?
What armies? The Chinese army or the Russian army or any army that's there. When an army appears, it is an army. It's not illusionary. It's not spiritual. They got airplanes. They got tanks. They got weapons of all sorts and all types. Nuclear bombs, neutron bombs, laser warfare.
And whose interpretation that those will be those physical beings because they have been put down in words, that I think is a question that needs to be addressed. That's a question I've always had. And just as he's asking for an absolute for what it is, I too say in that book, those representations, could they not be of something else, but they were used to illustrate?
Well, we're not here to solve all the world problems. We can't do jack diddly squat about it.
Well, what we're doing is just like I said earlier. If I were to stand on the street corner or be in a lounge, and you're my friend, and two guys say, "Listen, just as soon as Jack is not at home, we're going to rob his place, steal all his money, drink his liquor, and walk on his blue suede shoes." Now, if I didn't tell you, I would not be your friend. If I didn't get on the phone right now, right?
But leave it at that. What the hell
Right.
else can you do about
Well,
the rest of the world?
what I'm doing is I am telling people tonight to listen, these things are coming about, so I'm telling you. Believe it or not, it's up to you. I've told you that when you see these armies gathering, when you see the war clouds gathering, then you know that what the book says is true. Then you'll know that it may be too late.
If you are viewing this video, then it is not too late for you, your family, and loved ones to obtain protection. However, world events are on the steady march toward the Great Tribulation and the second coming of Jesus Christ. You can ignore this warning and pretend that it will not happen, which will only put you and your family in even greater danger. However, Christ will come when most will least expect it. With his army of spirit men who by force will conquer this planet and effect a regime of change on Earth who will replace Satan's hidden spirit governments and his human agents, with Jesus Christ as king ruling with God's immortal family. The good news is that he will wipe away all tears, restore justice, peace, and liberty for all on Earth, and reward those who have chosen to serve him with eternal life and job security in our family business forever. First the earth and then the universe, where you will be fulfilled using the talent and training God has given you and enjoy his promised pleasures for all eternity. Do not lose this priceless opportunity. Choose today to serve the Most High God and his Christ. For more exciting information in plain English on biblically based subjects, the end times, and the march to Armageddon, visit often the Global Church of God's website at www.gcg1.org. For the most current and breaking news of little noticed signs of the steady march toward the establishment of the beast power Armageddon and the soon coming return of the Christ, which will come as unexpected as a thief in the night. For warnings on the ominous and growing threats to our lives, liberty, and property, and for those you love, by the growing powerful forces in government and large international corporations. And for exclusive information on how you can protect yourself, your family, and loved ones from this ever-increasing evil, go now to America's Freedom Foundation website at www.erfreedomblog@aff1.org. Do your friends a favor. Tell them and your entire social network about this moving video presentation. Again, that's www.erfreedomblog@aff1.org. For a DVD copy of this presentation, email your request to eternallife@gcg1.org. Sincerely yours, America's Freedom Foundation.